Materials provided by Speedball.
My dad taught me how to make rubber stamps when I was little. He has this huge collection of his own that he made because he uses them in his collage and things.
What kind of art does he do?
He's a mail artist, like M-A-I-L.
Oh, like the post.
Yeah. So he makes like his own cancellation stamps and puts them on envelopes and stuff and makes his own little designs and sends them back and forth to other artists, and they're really, really cool.
Have you ever done that?
A little bit, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was in high school, I did a lot of that. So that's where I really got most of my rubber stamp making techniques.
So I'm really curious about learning how to do this because most of what I do is digital.
Yeah, I would love to pass this on to you, especially since you also do some collage things. This would be really good for your work.
Yeah, so it's like the one thing that I do that's physical art is collage and sketchbooking, and so I'm really excited to learn how to make stamps because it feels like a really logical progression.
It's like the easiest beginner step into printmaking. I made these little Ren stamps last night. They took me about an hour each to do.
That's so fast.
And I used the Speedball Speedy Cut for this gray material. And it's super, super soft. It's a little bit crumbly, but it works really well for making like a basic design.
What is the difference between all of these?
So the difference between these is this is probably the easiest to carve. It has a bit of a rough edge, but you get like this Xeroxy look to it.
Yeah, I see that.
Finally, what we have is the Speedy Carve, which has a bit more integrity to it, but it's also a little bit more difficult to carve. Still really easy to carve, though. My example that I'm going to make today will be on the Speedy Carve. So I have these two Wrens here, and we're going to do a third one today. I'm really into Wrens right now.
Why Wrens?
We just put up this birdhouse at home that's handmade, and some Wrens moved into it, which I thought was so cool. We have several different species in New Hampshire, so I'm going on my bird kick, gonna do all the Wrens. So I did these two here. This is a Carolina Wren, this is a house Wren, and we are gonna do the marsh Wren. Just be aware that whatever is printed on the surface of the plate here is going to come out the opposite way once you stamp it down.
That's got to be really hard when you're doing the alphabet.
Yeah, everybody's first time, they always end up putting their letters backwards, like including me. When I'm making my drawing, I like to use a Tombow brush pen because I can get different weights of line. I can get something really, really skinny, or I can get like a really thick line. I like to have a line drawing put together first, just so I know where the basic shapes are going to be, because I can't erase marker. I'm just going to use a pencil and draw in the basic shapes of the Wren. I've got the little head. I really like how their little heads are attached to these like big bodies, like they're just one big puffball. But that puffball is made of like several different shapes. The pencil is confusing because pencils have various shades. A marker can either be black or not black. That's the way that the stamp is going to work, is you have your ink and then you have the things that don't have ink on them. So it helps you figure out what you want your stamp to actually look like. Since I'm making a transfer out of this image, the next step is to color in with a soft pencil all of the black areas. And I want to get it nice and fully covered and color rather dark. You want the pencil to easily transfer onto your carving surface. I'm going to do the actual transfer. I'm going to try to line it up with the edge of my carving surface. I'm going to take a pencil and color really hard over everywhere that has the drawing. When I am both doing this on my own and teaching this project to kids, I really like using a pencil because I can see where I have burnished and where I haven't. Just gonna take a little peek. Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit harder in some areas because apparently I'm not doing this hard enough.
Why do you need to be careful when you move the page?
Because otherwise it's going to transfer in a different spot if things get jarred a little bit, and then that's super confusing. And it's good to always check before taking it off, because if you don't, then you might end up with like a really not good transfer. Gonna check. Okay, I think I can live with this. So now
cool.
I can carve it. I've got a really light image.
I see you're starting with a pretty small blade.
Yeah.
Is it better to start with a small blade? Why are you
I am personally starting with a small blade because for something that is this detail with all these little like dit, you want to use something that's this small.
How much control do you have?
Depends on like the size and the shape of things. Like it's really hard to do a round shape. It's just hard to, you're always twisting this and it doesn't come out that great. But things that like have little points, I can get like close to a hair's width.
Are you carving out the pencil line or are you carving around the pencil line?
I'm carving around the pencil line.
Okay.
Yeah, the pencil line is the area that I want to be the stamp.
What are some uses for stamps?
You can use them in collage. You can use them to make patterns. I really like making patterns with my stamps because I can repeat the image like forever. I can make cards, like they're infinitely reproducible. I can use them on paintings. I can put like acrylic paint on them and use them that way.
Are there any safety concerns or things you need to be careful about?
These carving tools are fairly safe, especially for stamps because it's so soft. You'd never find yourself pressing very hard, but generally, especially for comfort's sake, you want to be carving away from yourself and not towards yourself. Don't carve like towards your fingers or you might accidentally kind of stab yourself. But I haven't really gotten seriously hurt with these tools. When you use an X-Acto knife, which you will use later to cut your stamp out of this block, then you want to really be careful of that knife, keep it away from your fingers.
I noticed that you've changed how you're cutting the block now. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I finished doing all of my detail work on the inside, and now I'm preparing it to be cut out with an X-Acto knife.
Oh, so you're cutting it out of that entire...
Right, I'm not going to use this whole thing. I am changing the size of my cutting tool nib, so I'm getting a larger cutting tool because I don't want to cut forever. So I'm unscrewing the barrel nib like this, and then I pull out, replace it with a different nib. There's a little opening here. You push it away, screw it back up like this. Scoop it all out. How much would you say that is? Like almost 1/4 of an inch. That way I don't run the risk of accidentally cutting through my stamp. I'm just going to cut around it. One thing that I do because the carving material is so thick is I'll carve out little chunks at a time. You should save your chunks, especially ones that are like this big, because you can always make really tiny stamps. Clara's daughter just made 5 million really cool stamps with like little pieces that she cut off. I've got some scraggly bits that I'm going to shave off. This cutting tool, you notice that it's Speedball, but it's a different color than this. It's because I inherited this from my dad in the 80s.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so that's been around the block.
Yes.
But it's still working pretty well.
Yes, they like don't get old.
Okay, here we have ink and paper.
Thank you.
What kind of paper is it?
This is Reeves BFK printmaking paper. It's a very friendly printmaking paper. It works very well for stamps and lino cuts. Moment of truth. We're going to ink this up. I took this ink pad from my dad. He lent it to me. He's very nice, but you can get one of these at any basic craft store. You want to get even pressure on everything. Make sure all areas are inked up. Now we finally get to see what the actual image is going to look like.
That looks so good.
Feet go here. This is also why I like to carve close to the image. I used to only do squares and I couldn't tell like how things were oriented.
That's very clever. Well done.
Yeah. And then you want to press everywhere, just like you did on the stamp pad.
All right.
You get little bits. Things sticking out. But
God.
yeah, we did it. We did it. We made a stamp. I'm going to do another one, but this is a good opportunity since doing the first test to get rid of some of the errors.
Right.
So I see this little line here that I don't want.
Oh, so you know there's an error with the stamp.
Right.
Because it printed stuff you didn't want.
Yeah, so I'm going to carve that away. I'm using the little carving tool again because they're just small errors. And it's so nice doing this part because it's like really hard to see what I'm doing
Before.
Yeah. Here we go. Already looks a lot cleaner, I think. Okay, let's see what happens. There's still some things that I could improve on, like kind of fixing this area around the beak, but you can see that a lot of touch-ups helped. One of the great things about stamps is that you can reproduce them however many times you want. So what if you wanted a chorus of wrens? There's never only just one wren. I'm gonna ink this up again, and we're gonna have a little fun. First wren. All right, we got one, and this is gonna be her friend. There, now I've got two. Okay. This is like the printmaking term is a ghost print, when you make an image with the leftover ink on the plate. I think I might even be able to get a third out of here. What I like about doing the ghost print is that it makes images look further away. So I got a third one out of it, which is pretty cool. You can use different colors of ink. This is where you go crazy. Now, normally between inking one color or another, I would wash my stamp really lightly with a rag and some water. My red stamp pads at home look kind of brown at this point, but they still work just fine. The positioning of them you could make a story entirely out of the positioning of your stamps. There's a really fancy technique that I learned a little while ago called embossing. It's where you take embossing powder and you sprinkle it over an ink that's compatible with the powder. This Color Box pigment stamp pad. This is the kind that I use with embossing powder. Then you heat it up with the heat gun and it bleeds into the ink, and then the texture is raised.
Where can I buy embossing powder?
Any paper or craft store will have this.
Okay. What happens if you don't use the powder with this ink?
The ink will never ever dry, ever. It will go months without drying. It just doesn't work. And that's because it's meant to pick up the powder. It's just waiting for some embossing powder. Okay, got all inked up. Okay, there we go. I have gold and copper. I also have silver. I accidentally mixed it with my paint because I thought it's pigment. It's not pigment. I'm just gonna sprinkle like a thin layer over everything.
Okay.
You can do it pretty liberally because you want an even covering, and you're going to end up putting most of it back into the little container anyways. So I've covered the whole bird. Make sure it's over the whole thing and tap it off like this. At this point, something that I use is a little brush. You can see there's a little bit of excess powder on here. What you want is a really, really soft watercolor brush and lightly brush that off, because what's going to happen is if the heat gun touches that, it's going to melt. Before I use the heat gun, I am going to dump all of this extra powder back into the little bottle. This is a heat gun.
Hello, heat gun.
You gotta be really careful with these things because this area gets very, very hot very, very fast. It's like a very intense blow dryer. Okay, ready?
Okay.
It's already, feel this, it's already pretty hot.
Whoa.
Yeah. When you're using the gun, you want to hold it over the powder until it looks like it's shimmering or boiling or bubbling. And that means that it's starting to melt and that it is ready to go. You don't want to hold it for too long over the paper or it's going to burn the paper.
So cool. Oh, I think your paper's burned a little bit.
Yeah, one of the things that happens is the heat gun is so strong that it will burn the paper. Get the heat going slowly on it from far away rather than getting right up close and like sizzling it really quick, because otherwise it does that.
Does it have other settings?
No, it just has one.
But so you have to like tip it off?
Yes. You can probably use the brush at this point to get any extra off if there's any at all. So it's pretty shiny there.
Wow.
And you touch that. It's not hot.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that cool? It's a little raised.
So I'm really amazed by how easy it is.
Yeah, it's super portable too. As long as you have a cutting tool and a little square there, then you're all good to go and you can do it anywhere, anytime.
Right.
Yeah, so now you gotta go make your own. Oh! I'm not gonna... Ah!